Hey ladies and gentlemen, it's Michael Burhan, your lovely Brit on nerdgenius.com, and what I want to do here is kind of do a 5-day-a-week schedule, something rather different in terms of my usual videos and content, but also provide you guys with something that can generate discussion and hopefully drive new viewers to my channel. So this is the first of my 5-day-a-week videos. It's called Comics Rundown. Here we talk about comic book concepts and characters. There's nothing in the same vein as other comic book channels, of course, who do kind of stories and readings and also talk about other things in the comic book universe. I want to actually go with more unpopular opinions and start by talking about Marvel's current direction and why I think it's a bad move. So here on out, I'll give you guys that rather generic spoiler warning so I don't spoil the end results of Marvel Civil War 2 for you, because the comic I'm talking about kind of reveals something which may be the kind of the caveat for the event itself, but doesn't go into specifics, so you'll still have to check it out anyway, just so you know I've let you know. So here we go. If you've read the infamous Iron Man 1, you'll know that basically it alludes to the fact that Tony Stark is dead. His brain has been uploaded to a new AI system, and Doom ventures into his vault in order to obtain the Iron Man armor, and thus trying to accomplish his goal of becoming the new Iron Man, and secondary also to the other Iron Man, who's Riri Williams. Now, this is kind of something that Marvel has done quite recently with Bruce Banner by handing his mantle over to Amadeus Cho. So they've eliminated both Banner and also Stark from the current 616 timeline in order to enable someone else to take up the mantle. But unlike Amadeus Cho, who had a history with Bruce Banner and Hercules and had existed in the Marvel landscape long before taking up the mantle of the Hulk, Riri Williams and Victor Von Doom both haven't really had a history with Tony Stark. Well, Doom had, as a kind of an infamous villain, because he was battling everybody in the Marvel universe in the 80s and 90s, but they really didn't have that kind of association in order to take up the mantle. It's great to have a centralized female lead in a role of a superhero, but the thing with Bendis and Marvel, and that they kind of really shoehorn in, is they never focus on building characters anymore. If you look at the stories that they did before the events of Axis Secret Wars, you could see exactly what I'm talking about. They tend to push these stories in, try to kind of build these stories up, and then just stop. They never find a resolution. I've stopped caring about Tony Stark's parents, and also the fact that his company is basically going bankrupt, and none of these things we actually even know about. There is nothing that's been elaborated on those apart from the fact that Riri Williams managed to kind of dissect the Iron Man armor and re-upload her findings onto the internet, and that she managed to build her own suit of armor from MIT. What they could have done is they could have given Tony Stark a mentor role and have her as the mentee, and then once they've kind of eliminated his character, they could have wound up his stories, gave him a chance to pursue his parents, maybe using Civil War 2 as kind of a catalyst for him to stop being a superhero and saying, you know what, I'm hanging it up, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to be Iron Man anymore. It would have made more sense. He had a relationship that we were considering about with a beautiful woman who stopped being a playboy, who was trying to be a better person, but they never kind of gave that role any consistency. They just shoehorned Civil War 2 in, had him fight with Ms. Marvel, and pretty much that's it. Now, before I'm bombarded with hate from people calling me a misogynist, and let's think about this for a second, okay? Just put the pitchforks down. Tony was a central focus of Civil War 2 and was just figuring out who he really was after finding out that he was adopted. There's other ways that you could have easily have done this, and the same can be said with Bruce Banner in a sense. Yeah, I do understand that in comics no one is officially dead, but killing someone just to give a kind of a reaction, it's the same thing by having a horror movie that's riddled with jump scares. You get the initial reaction, but do you really care? It does nothing to aid the story and bring the plot to kind of a consistent close. It's just there to say, oh my god, look at the consequences, actions have consequences, It's more so there just to give social media buzz and get people talking about the fact that you've killed off their childhood heroes. Now, being someone from the 90s, this has really affected me because of the fact that I grew up with these characters. I grew up with Bruce Banner being the Hulk. I grew up with Tony Stark being Iron Man, and watching these guys get killed off seemingly one by one just to serve a purpose of introducing new characters makes no sense to me. It doesn't really accomplish anything in my mind apart from making me really mad at Marvel. And those of you who say that this is more of a way of Marvel to focus on new stories, look at what DC are doing with Batman, Superman, even the Justice League. According according to choicecron.com, these are the best-selling books month by month in comparison, and yes, I know they're actually $2 less, but they are really well-written stories. If you do your research, after the big events, initial interest tends to wane. You know, look at The Mighty Thor, great written story. People do love Jane Foster, but she's not selling, and the reason being, no one knows. No one can tell why, apart from the fact where her story, just like everybody else's, hasn't had the time to kind of be nurtured. You know, she's a consistent character. She's someone who's been in the Thorverse since its inception, but at the same time, it really doesn't accomplish anything unless we see what she wants to accomplish with that hammer. And hopefully, as we go from all new, all different Marvel to the next Marvel event, we'll actually figure out what her purpose is, and, you know, maybe they'll put a close to a story, or maybe she will consistently be the new Thor forever. You know, look what they did with Eric the Red. If most people don't know him, he used to be Thunderstrike. Now, before everyone gets their panties in a bunch and starts coming at me and saying, oh, you're not going to read it, so how would you know? Well, I will be reading the new Iron Man books, and yes, because I love what Marvel had done with Thor, and the new X-Men, and all these other introduction of new characters. I'm kind of not a fan of Miles's Spider-Man per se. I'm more of a fan of Peter Parker, but that's because Peter Parker was the Spider-Man of choice when I was growing up. But I still do like the fact they take risks with these characters, but I just feel like at the moment, Marvel are trying to serve a purpose for their film universe, and by building these new characters, introducing new concepts, they can find suitable replacements for the individuals that they're basically losing on the film side. You know, Chris Hemsworth is not going to be Thor forever. You've got like Robert Downey Jr., who synonymous with reinventing Iron Man from a B character to an A character. He's had his intention to leave. You've got all these other characters that are going to end up leaving their roles sooner or later, and I understand that Marvel want to try and find new ways to build their phases through their movies to keep them consistent and to produce something fresh, but at the same time, you need consistent stories. If you want to keep your fan base and retain that fan base so people can watch these movies and build towards events, you're gonna need a way to tell your stories appropriately to give us something to vouch for and someone to root for. Right now, I couldn't care less. And before everybody sits there and says, oh, he's just a DC guy, not really. I tend to love both kind of organizations. I also read Image as well. But when I look at characters and look at the way that they reboot these characters time and time again, there's ways it can be done right. As in with DC's Rebirth, where they managed to amalgamate the New 52 and the previous universe together to give it a rather rich context and new stories, and use old characters in such a way that they can build towards something amazing, which is what they're doing currently. And I know a lot of people aren't a fan of them using the Watchmen, but to me, it looks like something astonishing that I would love to read. And that's the difference. With Marvel ever-changing landscape, I can attest it to something that we see in the wrestling world a lot, with Dixie Carter sitting there saying, well, I'm changing the face of wrestling forever. There's only so many times you can say that you're changing the landscape before it gets old. And there's only so many times that an audience will look at what you have, and if it's not presented correctly, it's just going to end up having Marvel lose the core audience who supported them before bankruptcy, before the Disney purchase, before anything else. So that my question to Marvel is, what are you going to do about it? Okay guys, so I want to ask you your opinion now. I want to ask you if you think I'm being a little too hard on Marvel Comics, and if you feel that I should just give this all a chance, that hopefully with great writers like Brian Michael Bendis, for example, we will actually see a lot more great concepts introduced into the Marvel landscape. Or do you think I'm right? If so, leave a comment below, because these videos are here to generate discussion. I want to hear your thoughts, I want to hear your ideas, and also if you would like to leave a comment and ask me to do a video on something different, let me know. You know, as long as it's comic book related, I can do it for you on Comics Rundown. So this has been Michael Burhan, and I will see you at the comic shop at some point when I'm not being beaten to death by angry fans.